Yo, what's going on, everybody? Arie here. If you're new to my channel, welcome. If you're not, welcome back. In today's video, I want to introduce you to the richest person in the world under 30. Now, this particular person is very, very interesting, not just because they're rich, but because of their determination and also because of the space that they were able to build their fortune in. So this is Sam Bankman-Fried, that's his name, also known as SBF on Twitter. If you are on Twitter, make sure you give him a follow. He always has really good things to say, and he's actually the founder of FTX, which is one of the biggest cryptocurrency derivative exchanges. But I figured I could watch the Forbes features video that they have on them together with you, see if I can commentate on some things, and maybe you'll learn something. So let's take a look.
Sam Bankman-Fried is a 29-year-old American expat who had lived in Hong Kong for the last few years, but actually just recently moved to Bermuda. He's notable for a number of reasons, but I think most critically, he is the richest 20-something in the world and the richest person in all of crypto with a net worth of $22.5 billion. What's most interesting about the way he raised this money is that unlike a lot of people that got into Bitcoin very early on, he started relatively late. He did not purchase his first Bitcoin until the year 2017 when he found a way.
Oh, that's when I purchased my first little bit of Bitcoin. Pretty interesting comparison there. Pretty interesting. Maybe I'll be worth 22 billion someday too because of that.
This sort of arbitrage. Differences in the price of Bitcoin between US and Japanese exchanges, sometimes buying it and then selling it at a 30% markup. He did this over and over again until he built a small fortune. And then he used that in conjunction with some venture capital that he raised to launch an exchange.
Hold up, that sounds like a finesse. Let me rewind that real quick and make sure that I'm understanding this correctly.
In the price of Bitcoin between US and Japanese exchanges, sometimes buying it and then selling it at a 30% markup.
So he would buy Bitcoin in a Japanese exchange and sell it to the US market at a markup. That's kind of genius. He did that over and over again until he built a small fortune. Wow.
He did this over and over again until he built a small fortune. And then he used that in conjunction with some venture capital that he raised to launch an exchange called FTX. FTX just set a record for the largest private raise in crypto history. It brought in $900 million at an $18 billion valuation.
Wow.
Sam's inclusion in the billionaires list is really notable because, for one thing, the only person in the world that has ever gotten so rich so quickly is Mark Zuckerberg, who everyone has heard of. And I think that really speaks to the way that he was able to time the market to take advantage of the first mainstream bull run in 2017, where Bitcoin went up from about $2,500 to close to $20,000 in just over 6 months. And then how he was able to roll that into building an exchange that caters to more active traders that trade higher amounts at higher frequencies. And he's really in some ways become a kingmaker in the industry.
Damn.
I first started looking into crypto, not because of anything to do with blockchain technology. It just seemed like a good trading opportunity. That was sort of what my background was. And there are lots of signs that it was a space that had a ton of demand and a ton of excitement and interest and volume.
This is the first time I've ever heard this guy speak, even though I've been following him on Twitter for like a year. So this is kind of shocking. I actually didn't know that was him talking for a second.
But not very much liquidity. And what that means is there's a pretty significant chance that customers are not getting great prices when they're trading. For that same reason, there's a potentially a lot of money to be made providing liquidity to those, being a market maker, doing arbitrage, and trying to sort of increase the efficiency and liquidity of crypto markets globally. That did turn out to be true. But it also quickly became clear that the space was in need of better infrastructure. When you think about the infrastructure in crypto, a lot of it is the exchanges. They combine a lot of different business models together, and it seemed like a really compelling opportunity to try to jump in and build something better.
That's what it's all
He's
about.
A really interesting subject to report on for a number of reasons. I mean, first of all, his appearance. He's only 29 years old, and he typically wears a t-shirt or a sweatshirt that has the FTX logo on it, khaki shorts, and he has this big kind of poofy hair. It's funny, when we got a quote from Tom Brady for the story, who is an FTX endorser, and owns FTX stock.
That actually is a big thing that I've been seeing lately is Tom Brady endorsing FTX, which is so funny, man. Like, this timeline is hilarious. Who would have ever thought that, you know, the GOAT football player in America, well, obviously because America is the only country with American football, but he is the GOAT. You can't take that away from him. He's actually endorsing FTX pretty consistently. He's a big crypto guy now, and now it actually makes sense. I didn't know that he actually had, you know, equity in the company via stock. Obviously, FTX is not a publicly traded company, so that's insane. He got in super early. That's easily going to be $1 billion investment, in my opinion, from Tom Brady in the future. So that just puts him in an even more goated category of people, and I didn't know that. That's really interesting.
He said the first thing that jumped out to him about Sam when he saw him on TV before they had even met is the fact that he needs a haircut. The second thing that really stood out is his transparency. I mean, he's very open to talking, and the reason I think is because he's raising all this money for a particular reason. He's a believer in a element of philanthropy known as effective altruism, where adherents rely on the use of data and modeling to find objective ways to do the most good possible with their money. There's a few different roles that somebody can play as an effective altruist, and he's chosen to be what's known as an earn to giver, which means he's going to try to earn as much money as he possibly can so that he can give it to people that are involved in actual charities to give the money away and have the most positive impact.
That's pretty
cool,
in
the end,
man.
My goal is to do as much good as I can for the world. Mostly what I think about is what role should I be playing here? And I think the most impressive people I know, the people who I've the most respect for and who are maybe doing the most good for the world are the people who are really taking charge of some of these initiatives to combat some of the biggest problems that we're facing as a society. But another way that one can have impact is by helping to fund some of these causes, and that's what I've been doing. So I got into finance in the first place to try and maximize the amount that I can donate to some of the most effective causes. I'd certainly love to be spending more time thinking directly about what these projects can be working on, but right now there are a lot of really impressive people doing that. I wish there were way more. My main role right now is to do what I can to help support them financially or any other way that I can.
The idea of when a philanthropist decides to stop earning and starts giving it away is a question that has plagued billionaires for a very long time. And it's something that's very applicable to effective altruists, especially earn to givers, because their job, or I guess their self-appointed job, is to just make as much money as possible. This would mean that Sam has very little say in where the money goes or how it's spent. He's just going to make as much as possible. And that's a really interesting question, because that's not the same model that other corporate titans have taken. I spoke with a philosopher and a professor at Princeton known as Peter Singer, who is sort of seen as one of the fathers of this effective altruist movement. And he said it's a very individual decision, and it's hard to know what the right thing to do is. He spoke to me about Bill Gates and how Bill decided to step down from running Microsoft to run the Gates Foundation, which is very much a full-time job. And he told me it's really hard to kind of do the counterfactual and wonder, was that the right decision? Obviously, Microsoft is still doing well, but perhaps it would be doing even better if he decided to stay in that role and not turn it over to Steve Ballmer.
That's actually a really interesting point. I didn't really think about that. A lot of these top CEOs really want to donate most of their wealth. And basically the point that he just brought up is like, but wouldn't they be able to do more good if they just stayed in the company, made the company better, grow it more, make more money so that they can then do even more good for the world? That's a really good point. And I think that's Sam's approach right now. He's like, I would love to spend more time thinking about how to actually do more good, like what problems actually need to be addressed and funded in order to fix the world. But I think my role is better suited to just like grow this company as much as I possibly can and then start thinking later down the line how we can actually help the world. I think Elon Musk is kind of like in the same boat as that. I don't think he's super concerned right now on a daily basis about how he can be helping so much. He's just focusing on building cars, building rockets, and helping humanity in that way, and then trying to make as much money as possible to then use for the right causes that, you know, some other smart person can think of that will actually impact the world positively. So that is a really interesting point.
This is the dilemma that's Sam's going to be coming back to time and time again, especially if and when his wealth grows and becomes more liquid. He actually told us right now that he has only about $200,000 in the bank account. And in the story, we wrote that one way that Sam is very much like a 29-year-old is that he's remarkably cash poor. But assuming that his business ventures go as planned, at some point he's going to have to wonder if it makes sense for him to give away the money, or if he's happy to keep trying to earn as much as possible and give it to trusted third parties and partners to give it away.
Yeah. So something that he just mentioned is that SBF is pretty cash poor. I mean, $200,000 isn't really like poor, I guess, but in comparison to what he's worth, that's very much a minuscule amount. So in that way, yes, he is cash poor. And what's interesting to me is that a lot of billionaires actually operate in that way. They're very cash poor, and they just sort of allocate their money from asset to asset. This is another reason why I'm very bullish on Bitcoin in particular, because not only has it proven to be the reserve currency of the crypto world, I mean, everything basically follows Bitcoin's price action, but also because it has proven itself to be the best store of value out there. And what that tells me is that a lot of billionaires, a lot of, you know, billion-dollar institutions are going to start allocating some of their cash or even some of their other assets into Bitcoin, therefore driving the price up significantly, especially since there's only going to be a set amount of Bitcoins ever. There's not going to be any more that are going to be created. So it's a truly scarce asset, kind of like gold. So it's like a better gold, really. I mean, that's the most simple, fundamental way to explain Bitcoin. It's a better gold. But with a better gold comes a chain of events that will slowly fix the world, because this gold is not controlled by any one particular entity. So that could get rid of a lot of the corruption in the world, and who knows what could come out of that. I tend to be extremely optimistic, not unreasonably optimistic. I definitely hit myself with reality checks almost every day, but I'm definitely reasonably optimistic about the crypto environment, and especially when it comes to Bitcoin and Ethereum. So I hope you guys found this video interesting. I just wanted to share with you guys, and I actually did find it pretty interesting. And that's about it. See ya.